Diezani, Omokore, Aluko bribe saga. U.S. court papers reveal what each person got from stolen Nigeria's oil money. Court papers obtained from the United States of America have exposed how Mrs. Diezani Alison-Madueke, the former immediate past Minister of Petroleum Resources, received high-end properties in the United States and the United Kingdom in exchange for facilitating illicit business opportunities in Nigeria's oil and gas sectors for two business partners, Messrs. Omokore and Aluko. The papers, obtained by SaharaReporters, are related to a civil forfeiture notice filed against the trio and two conspirators by the U.S. Department of Justice, with prosecutors showing that Messrs. Omokore and Aluko bought 4 residential properties in and around London worth £11.45 million for the use of Mrs. Alison-Madueke, her mother and other members of her family. Some of the properties, the U.S. court papers showed, were renovated at eye-watering costs, fitted with luxury items, including artworks, to provide a lush lifestyle for Mrs. Alison-Madueke. The court processes, filed at the Houston Division of the U.S. District Court, revealed that company named Miranda International Limited, owned by Mr. Omokore, purchased a property known as The Falls for £3,250,000. The property is located just outside London at 96 Camp Road, Gerrards Cross, Buckinghamshire SL97 PB. After the purchase, said U.S. prosecutors, Mr. Omokore's sidekick, Mr. Aluko, engaged a construction company to carry out an upgrade of the property and maintain the plumbing, electrical, air conditioning, and audio-visual systems. Omokore and Aluko purchased and improved the falls for the exclusive use of Alison-Madueke and her family. A mobile telephone recovered at the known residence of Alison-Madueke and her mother contained digital photographs of Alison-Madueke present inside the falls, said prosecutors. They added that during the period, Mrs. Alison-Madueke, who was strictly addressed by service providers as the madam in the home, was the only occupant of the property. Around 8 October, prosecutors found that Mr. Aluko, using his American Express card, purchased 2 identical exercise machines at Harrods in London at the cost of £10,926 each. One of the machines was ordered to deliver to the known London address of the former petroleum minister, while the other was to be delivered to the Falls. In March 2011, just 4 days before Aluko met with National Petroleum Development Company, NPDC, unpaid bill, the court papers further stated. Prosecutors discovered that roughly 1 month after the assault, Tenka paid a total of £135,361, 48 to the chauffeur company. The former minister's 2 cronies also bought her luxury furniture in Houston, Texas. Prosecutors said they were told by an employee of Houston furniture store that Mrs. Alison-Madueke visited her showroom on multiple occasions, during which she would identify specific items of interest to her, which the employee would photograph. The court papers stated that the former minister's purchases were always paid for by someone else. In particular, said prosecutors, the furniture store employee recalled that Mr. Omokore was the first person to visit the store and to pay for her selections. The trip was in September 2010, when Mrs. Alison-Madueke was in Houston to deliver a keynote address at Rice University. While in the U.S., Mrs. Alison-Madueke's cronies wired a total of $197,600 to Houston Furniture Store in two separate transactions on or about September 30, 2010, and October 1, 2010. The payments were said to be in settlement of approximately $200,000 worth of purchases signed for by Mr. Omokore. Also on October 7, 2010, Houston Furniture Store drew up two additional sales invoices in Mr. Omokore's name amounting to $23,703.50. The following day, he emailed photographs of the items listed on these additional sales invoices directly to the former petroleum minister. On October 9, 2010, Mrs. Alison-Madueke responded by email to him, "THX. Thanks, cabinet is the correct one." 4 days later, Mr. Omokore authorized Houston Furniture Store to charge his Nevada company another $23,703.50 as payment for the additional furniture purchases made in his name and discussed, via email, directly with Mrs. Alison-Madueke. In October 2010, Mr. Aluko arranged with Houston Furniture Store to combine the recent purchases made by himself and Mr. Omokore from its two outlets and to ship the merchandise to Mr. Omokore in Lagos. The court papers stated that at least one of the items purchased in Mr. Omokore's name and paid for by him has been matched by vendor number, item number, and store-issued control number to furniture discovered in Messrs. Purchases made for her by her cronies included $1,564,774 Luigi 16 sideboard at $10,82900, $1,373,385 George 3 console at $2,99990 and $1,479,702 Japan secretaire at $5,50800. Mr. Aluko was also found to have returned to the furniture store on May 4, 2011, and purchased another $53,89008 worth of merchandise. In May 2012, Mr. Aluko wired $461,500 to Houston Furniture Store from a bank account ending in 09038 held in his name at LGT Bank, Schweiz, AG in Switzerland, the LGT 09038 account. Also on May 4, 2012, he purchased an additional $262,091.47 worth of furniture at Houston Furniture Store. On June 1, 2012, he wired $280,595.81 to the furniture store from his LGT 09038 account as payment for the purchases. In or around March 2013, Houston Furniture Store arranged a shipment of furniture comprising a subset of items from Mr. Aluko's May 2012 purchases at the two outlets of Houston Furniture Store. The shipment was sent from Houston to Lagos, Nigeria. The consignee was listed by prosecutors as Mr. Chiji Akazialu, a lawyer to Mr. Omokore. One of the furniture items purchased by Mr. Aluko on May 4, 2012, has been matched by vendor number, item number and store-issued control number and found in Messrs. The Hollywood lifestyle bestowed on Mrs. Omokore and Aluko was payment for her role in bending Nigeria's rules to benefit them. As petroleum minister, she was in charge of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and used her powers to award a series of strategic alliance agreements, SAS, between the companies owned by the two cronies and the NPDC. Her cronies' companies were found to have been neither qualified for the favors they got nor performed obligations stated in the agreements. Yet, they creamed off over $1.5 billion in revenues from the sale of Nigeria's crude oil, a sum they laundered into the US and United Kingdom. The cronies' trick was to use a variety of shell companies and multi-layered financial transactions to mask the nature, location and ownership of the inappropriate wealth. Messrs. Aluko and Omokore are the owners of Atlantic Energy Holdings Limited, Atlantic Energy Brass Development and its subsidiaries, Atlantic Drilling Concepts Nigeria Limited and Atlantic Energy Brass. He also has interests in Tenco Limited and wholly owns Earnshaw Associates Limited. Their Atlantic Energy Drilling Concepts, ECT, and Atlantic Energy Holdings Limited, ET, were incorporated in the British Virgin Islands. Tenco Limited was incorporated in the UK, with Mr. Aluko and wife as directors. Before 2010, when Mrs. Alison-Madueke became minister, the NNPC was involved in a joint venture, JV, as a subsidiary of a major international oil company, IOC, for the development and production of oil and gas in connection with 8 oil mining leases, OMLs. The JV held interests in and operated OMLs 26, 30, 34, and 42, in 4 CATOs, as well as 60, 61, 62 and 63, in brass. The IOC subsidiary owned 45% of the JV, with the NNPC owning the remaining. The IOC subsidiary, in 2010, divested itself and sold its minority stake, selling to various indigenous companies and leaving NNPC with the responsibility for financing and operating the OMLs. That task was assigned, along with its own 55% stake, to its subsidiary, the NPDC, which lacked the expertise and financial resources to run the OMLs. On account of this, NPDC sought to go into SAS with outside companies with capacity for finance and technical expertise. EDC, incorporated in July 2010, barely 3 months after Mrs. Alison-Madueke was appointed minister, was awarded OMLs 26, 30, 34, and 42. EDC, in March 2011, announced its first interest in entering into and sent a letter to NPDC. Barely 3 weeks later, Mr. Aluko, representing EDC, met NPDC officials to discuss a possible SAS award. In the next 3 weeks, the company and NPDC entered into SAS for OMLs 26 and 42. About a month later, both parties entered into 2 more agreements for OMLs 30 and 34, with Mr. Omokore signing on behalf of EDC. Prosecutors said the SAS were awarded on the say-so of Mrs. Alison-Madueke. For example, in a recorded conversation between Alison-Madueke and Aluko, Alison-Madueke acknowledged that "we stuck our necks out regarding the SAS and we supported it," said the U.S. court papers. This was despite the fact that a February 2014 report issued by the then governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, stated that EDC had neither the technical expertise nor the capital to develop the joint venture, but was, nonetheless, able to lift crude and retain the proceeds. Up to 70% of the profit of the joint venture. The report concluded that the arrangement was set up for the purpose of acquiring assets belonging to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and transferring the income to private hands. The SAS required EDC to pay non-recoverable entry fees prior to the agreements taking effect. The value of the entry fees was to be determined based on the estimated probable oil and gas reserves within the area covered by the forfeitures OMLs. In addition, the forfeitures SAS each required EDC to pay $350,000 per year to NPDC for the first 5 years of the agreements for the provision of training facilities for NPDC staff. They also required EDC to provide all the funds required for NPDC's 55 share of petroleum operating costs. Prosecutors, however, found that NPDC's share of the operating costs for the OMLs from March 2011 through December 2015 was at least $1.4 billion. In return for meeting its obligations under the SAS, EDC would be entitled to recover the cost of financing NPDC's share of the operating costs and would be further entitled to a share of NPDC's profit as determined by a profit-sharing formula contained in the SAS. EDC's entitlements, said the court papers, were payable through the company receiving allocations of available oil sufficient to cover the amounts due as cost recovery and profit. These obligations were not fulfilled. EDC substantially failed to perform under the forfeitures SAS. In particular, EDC did not fulfill its requirement to fund training facilities for NPDC staff, leading to an outstanding obligation of approximately $5,600,000. Furthermore, EDC failed to cover NPDC's share of the forfeitures operating costs. Of the more than $1.4 billion required to finance such costs, EDC made contributions of only approximately $305,108,522.43. Despite EDC's failure to fulfill its obligations under the forfeitures SAS, EDC was allocated and permitted to lift and sell, for its own benefit, 21 cargoes of crude oil valued at approximately $677,238,673, stated the court papers. As the drenched Mrs. Alison-Madueke in modest opulence, Messrs. Aluko and Omokore also showered gifts on the then-ruling People's Democratic Party, PDP, to which they donated vehicles worth $800 million. They equally bought cars valued at over $130 million for Mrs. Alison-Madueke and top shots of NPDC. For himself, Mr. Aluko paid $18,548,619.99 and N1,070,000 to FBN Mortgages Limited as part payment for 26 flats at 46 Gerrard Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. The total cost of the flats was N5,210,520,315. He also paid $25,839,606.77 and N95,000 to Real Bank to part finance the acquisition and renovation of properties by the Atlantic Energy Drilling Concepts Nigeria Limited, EDC, and Atlantic Energy Brass Development Limited, EBT. These included Mason Apartments at 6 Gerrard Road, Ikoyi, Lagos, comprising 60 units of 3-bedroom apartment valued at $78 million, Marion Apartments Banana Island, Ikoyi, Lagos, consisting of 43 units at the cost of $76,160,000, 33A Cooper Road, Ikoyi, which was renovated at $4,937,750, and Admiralty Towers at 8 Gerrard Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. The two businessmen transferred $69,912,981.15 to Mia Hotels Limited, First Motors Limited, VI Petrochemicals, Evergreen Reality and Management, Wiz Trade Limited, The First Union Integrated Services and Amity Plus Limited. Mr. Aluko acquired for himself high-end properties at Grove End Road, London NW, 755 Sorbonne Road, Los Angeles 952 North Alpine Drive Los Angeles, and 815 Cima del Mundo. He also bought land at 807 Coma del Mundo, in Los Angeles. He equally bought homes or apartments at 1049 Fifth Avenue, New York, 1948 and 1952 Tolles Avenue, Santa Barbara, 157 West 57th Street, New York, 4100 Let Revenge, Dubai. In Nigeria, he bought Avenue Towers in Lagos, bought a piece of land in Montana Tremblant, Canada and a property at Colina d'Oro Montanola, Switzerland. He acquired the luxury yacht, Galactica Star, at the cost of $80 million. He bought 58 exotic cars, expensive watches, private jets, Global Express S5 GMG and a Bombardier Global 6009 HOP. Court documents show that his bank accounts heaved with cash. According to the documents, he had a bank balance of $25 million in LDT Switzerland, $1 million at Corner Bank, Lugano, Switzerland, $40 million at Deutsche Bank, Geneva, and $175,000 at HSBC, London. He had 75 stake equity in Atlantic Energy Brass Development as well as 10 stake in 7 Energy.